Hello, welcome to the Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, now welcome back to Reframe Mindset podcast. My name is Colin Brooks. So, this episode is going to talk about analysis paralysis. Because that is something that I've encountered a lot in my life. I recently know, doing this backyard cleaning. Now I've dealt with it a lot. And for those who don't know what is analysis paralysis, so we just go to good or reliable Google and tell what it is. Yeah, man. So analysis paralysis is an inability to make a decision due to overthinking a problem. And it's you can hear the definition of it, but the definition don't really enlighten the reality. You know, because like in the reality, what happens is that basically you're there, you're seeing how you can solve the problem, but for some reason you don't you don't want to do it. Because you're too lazy. It's like your mind thinking about the steps and be like, oh my god, I have to really go through all these steps just to solve these problems. you know? And you're basically stuck there. You're stuck there looking at the solution, looking at the problem and seeing the solution, but can't move because you're just stuck. You just like be like, wow, I really have to do all of this just to solve the problem. And sometimes that is something hard. It's just that what happens that is your brain break down the solution into steps. And steps seem like a lot of steps, but in reality it's just some simple stuff if you actually start. Yeah, so that yeah, when you want to do some when you're doing something, that is something you will encounter. I can't tell if it's an absolute, but I've encountered it a lot. And what I've realized is that it comes up mostly when I'm at the end of doing something. Because now when I'm at the finish, see when I can see that okay, it's almost done. That's where the laziness and all those stuff that comes up. Like that's where I basically start move lazy and all kind of stuff, and then the analysis process take place right there because you're seeing the you're like you're so close, and because you're so close, it's like your brain started making up all kind of excuses to delay the task of basically just completing the task. And due to all of that, I think analysis paralysis mm, can also be, what should I call it, some related to procrastination. How can I say it? Procrastination can be as a result, or analysis paralysis can really result in procrastination. So most of my life I've been a procrastinator, and I guess analysis paralysis has accounted for one of those reasons. Because sometimes in a procrastination situation, what happens is that I think about how so I like, for example, I would get a homework or something to do, and I look at the question and say, okay, I can actually do this, and I think about how I'm going to approach the questions and stuff in my head. I said, okay, yes, this is pretty easy. I can do it. And what happened was I delay doing the homework, and then what happens now is that I wait until like the night before I do the homework, and then when I start to do the homework, I realize that okay, the approach that I had in my head did not work. So now I have to actually put in actual effort. So I have to actually start to find out how to actually do this thing. And it's like that's so analysis paralysis can cause procrastination. So that's another thing that is as a result of analysis paralysis. And it's something you can't, it's hard to really get rid of, you know. And you have, I think you have to be disciplined to get rid of it. And another thing you can't get rid of it. What I realize is that what you can do is kind of catch yourself in the analysis paralysis. What happens is that you see yourself staring in space, looking at the solution, and then you can say, "Oh, I'm I'm overanalyzing this. It's not time to really snap back to reality." So that's basically how I'm kind of starting to deal with it now, and I kind of have to catch myself. But even when I catch myself, the laziness really forced me to make me still want to overanalyze the problem. Yeah, but I guess there isn't really much to say about this. It's just that this episode is kind of one of those episodes to kind of inform me that yes, this is one of the things. So when you're, especially like for example, where I actually see this a lot, programming analysis paralysis. Like I remember one of my previous episodes, you would remember that I talk about the programming BS, the GitHub can't work. And what happened was that I installed it, and all I needed to do was to restart the computer. Things things like that are really what are or analysis paralysis when it comes to programming. Because what's happening is that most of the problems are some simple problems that are because our brain is looking for a complex solution that we overlook the simple solutions and then we we dare googling trying to find out the answer and such like that, just to find out that it's something simple like maybe deleting a line, restarting a computer or something like that. So programming is one of those places where analysis paralysis is really, really prominent. So if you're a programmer, you suppose you can relate to that. Yeah. So I really can't. I don't think there's. I can't tell you no solution for it. This episode just alerted that it's going to come up. I know all I can tell you to do is that this episode kind of give you an idea of how it might come up in you when you're doing something, and so that when you're doing it and then you see yourself in that situation, then you can say, "Oh, wait, I'm over analyzing this." Let me just stop and really think, get myself out of this, and just try to approach this a different way. Yeah. So that's basically for this episode. Thanks for listening. I look forward for the next episode. Mhm.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
Recreating yourself. And there's a lot of things and stuff online about recreating yourself and such. And there's a book, and a really famous book that has that the 48 laws of power. And the law one. I'm going to read that law in terms of creating yourself, but I don't really mean it literally like that because that book is really talk about gaining power. What what I'm talking about is not recreating yourself to gaining power. It's recreating yourself to achieve your dreams, and maybe you're a person that wants your dream to be achieved without really having all of this fame, all have to be acquiring power. But what happens is you will have to become a new you to for because the dream, bro, the dream requires, like, for example, suppose